What kind of man claims a stranger as his wife without asking her first, and why did he do it in front of the most dangerous land baron in the territory? The sun scorched the dusty main street of Jericho Creek, as if trying to burn the whole town into the ground. Heat shimmered above the rooftops. Dusty boots clacked over cracked planks. Tumbleweeds drifted like lonely ghosts. That was when James Mallister first saw her. A thin woman with shaky hands and dusty hair, digging through the trash behind the Yellow Moon Saloon, as if it were her last hope. James had only stopped to wipe sweat from his brow. A tall, broad-shouldered blacksmith-turned-rancher, he had come into town for supplies. But everything changed the moment he saw her crouched beside the trash bin, picking through scraps like a starving animal. Her dress was torn and dirty. Her face was streaked with grime. She looked ready to collapse. He walked toward her slowly. She flinched, ready to run. James knelt and held out his canteen. She stared at it, like she wasn't sure it was real. When she finally drank, she drank as though she'd crossed miles of desert. He kept his voice calm. "Easy. There's more water if you need it." Before she could reply, the saloon doors swung open. Wyatt Herp himself stepped out, dusting off his coat. He tipped his hat at James and kept walking, but the moment felt unreal. A famous lawman witnessing a quiet act of mercy in a forgotten town. James stayed focused on the trembling woman. "Name's James Mallister," he said gently. "I work the forge. Let me help you." She swallowed hard and whispered, "Elizabeth." Or Liz. He offered her a hand and helped her up. Something in her sad eyes stirred something fierce inside him. He didn't know her story, but he knew she needed more than water. He brought her into the small diner next door. People stared, but he ignored them. He bought her stew, bread, and coffee. She ate fast, like she hadn't had a real meal in days. When she finally slowed, James asked, "How'd you end up here?" Liz lowered her gaze. "I came west with a fiancé. He gambled everything away in St. Elma. Then he left me alone. No money, no family, no job, nothing." James felt his jaw tighten. He knew her fiancé's name before she said it. Vernon Gaffney. James had seen Gaffney cheat at Mama Myrtle's poker table once. A slick talker, a liar, a man who ran from every mess he made. "You're safe now," James said firmly. "Come stay at my ranch. I've got room. You can rest until you're ready to stand again." Liz stared at him like she couldn't believe someone would offer kindness without a price. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because it's right," James said simply. He brought her out of town in his wagon. The dry land stretched in every direction, but Liz finally breathed easier. When they reached the Mallister ranch, Colton Barnes, James's foreman, tipped his hat politely. James introduced Liz as a friend. No one asked questions. Lucy Mallister, James's teenage niece, rushed out of the barn and took an instant liking to Liz. Within minutes, she was showing Liz around the ranch house, chattering about chores and chickens. For the first time since being abandoned, Liz felt a spark of hope. Over the next 3 weeks, she healed. She helped with chores. She laughed with Lucy. She watched James work the forge and wondered how someone so strong could also be so gentle. James felt her presence settle into the ranch like sunrise settling over the prairie. He tried not to stare when she passed him tools at the forge or when she laughed at Lucy's jokes. But he felt something deep and quiet pulling him toward her. Still, trouble came like a storm rolling over the plains. One afternoon, a fancy buggy rolled up the ranch road. Franklin Holcomb stepped out, dressed in polished boots and a dark suit. He owned half the land around Jericho Creek and wanted the other half. His smile was sharp as a knife. "Afternoon, James," he said. "Come to offer triple what I paid last time. Sell the ranch and walk away rich." James stood firm. "Not selling." Holcomb chuckled. "You have a wife now, I hear. Might be wise to think about her future." Liz stiffened beside James. Holcomb's gaze slid to her. "And this must be the lady of the house. Elizabeth, is it? Are you Mallister's wife?" Quote. Liz opened her mouth, startled, but James stepped forward protectively, hand firm on her shoulder. "Yes," he said. "She's my wife." Liz froze. Holcomb paused, studying them. A slow smile crept across his face. "Well, congratulations." He climbed back into his buggy, leaving dust swirling behind him. The moment he disappeared down the road, Liz spun toward James, eyes wide. "Your wife?" she whispered. "Why did you say that?" James rubbed the back of his neck. "He was looking at you like you were something to buy. Calling you my wife was the only way to shut him down." Liz felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wasn't sure whether to be angry or grateful. I suppose that's one way to do it. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the flutter in her chest. James didn't look like he regretted the words. That night, the ranch buzzed with whispers. Mama Myrtle cornered James in the saloon the next day, demanding to know why he married without telling her. Even Wyatt Herp raised an eyebrow over his whiskey glass. But worse news arrived fast. Vernon Gaffney rode into town. He strutted toward the ranch with a grin, claiming his beloved Elizabeth, and waving a letter he said proved they were engaged by law. Liz went pale at the sight of him. James blocked his path like a stone wall. "She's not going with you." Gaffney smirked. "We'll see about that." A chill ran through Liz's heart. Trouble had found her. And it wasn't done yet. What happens when a man stands between a snake and the woman the snake claims as his own? Liz felt her breath thin in her chest as she faced Vernon Gaffney again. Every memory of his lies flashed back at her. The sweet promises, the excuses, the gambling, the moment he vanished and left her stranded. James stepped closer to her without thinking, his presence steady as an oak tree. "Elizabeth isn't leaving with you," James said firmly. Gaffney tipped his hat with a mocking grin. "That's where you're wrong, friend. She and I are bound by a promise ceremony. Signed, witnessed, legal." James didn't trust a single word. "You forged something," he growled. "I know your ways." Before Gaffney could reply, Liz found her voice. It shook, but it was strong enough. "I'm not going anywhere with you. I choose James. I choose this ranch." Gaffney's smile slipped. "Choose him all you want," he snapped. "The law doesn't care who you choose." The tension made even the horses uneasy. James didn't back down. "Then, let the law speak." Everything might have ended right there in a fight, but Gaffney wasn't foolish enough to pick a gun battle alone. He rode off with a warning tossed over his shoulder. "You'll regret this." His words hung in the air like smoke. That evening, James and Liz finally sat down in the quiet main room of the ranch house. A single oil lamp flickered between them. Liz wrung her hands together, nervous and shaken. "We can't lie about being married," she whispered. "The whole town believes it now." James looked into her eyes, his heart pounding. "It doesn't have to be a lie." Her breath caught. "Liz," he said softly, "I don't want you to leave. And I don't want Holcomb or Gaffney thinking they can lay a hand on you. Maybe we make it real." Liz stared at him. He wasn't pressuring her. He was offering her something solid in a world full of danger. But she needed to think. She needed time to breathe. "Let's wait," she said. "Let's just think first." James nodded slowly. "Whatever you need." For a few days, peace returned. Liz worked with Lucy, gathering eggs and making meals. She almost felt safe. But shadows always return when you least expect them. One morning, as the sun rose pink over the fields, a lone rider approached. James recognized him instantly, Gaffney. He sauntered into the stable yard like he owned the place. He had a gun on his hip and trouble in his eyes. "Where's my fiancé?" he shouted. James stepped outside with a shotgun in his hand. Liz followed behind him, heart racing. "You aren't welcome here," James warned. But Gaffney lunged forward and grabbed Liz by the arm. She cried out. He dragged her close, using her as a shield. "Shoot me now, Mallister! You'll hit her first!" For a heartbeat, everything froze. But then Lucy charged from behind him with a pitchfork. Gaffney spun in surprise just long enough for James to break his grip. James slammed the butt of his shotgun across Gaffney's shoulder, sending him sprawling into the dirt. Gasps tore from the ranch hands as the stable boy grabbed Gaffney's pistol off the ground. Gaffney scrambled to his feet, clutching his bleeding arm. "That's assault," he spat. "You'll pay for that." James raised the shotgun again. "Next time you come here, you won't walk away." Gaffney rode off, cursing them all. But the danger was far from over. Because Gaffney did not go far. He went straight into the town's fanciest hotel, where Franklin Holcomb was staying. Two men, both greedy and desperate for control, found themselves seated together in the polished lobby. Gaffney and Holcomb struck a deal. Gaffney would help force Liz off the ranch with fake paperwork, and Holcomb would crush James into selling the land. Together they set their plan in motion. Fence posts went missing. Windows shattered at night. Shots echoed from the hills. The ranch hands stayed awake, rifles in hand. Liz could barely sleep, guilt tearing her apart. James tried to reassure her. "We'll protect you. We'll protect this ranch." But even he felt unease creeping into his bones. Then, one hot afternoon, Holcomb himself rode up to the ranch gates with 2 hired guns. Dust swirled around his fancy buggy as he stepped out. "James," Holcomb said with a smug smile, "I'm here to make my last offer, triple the price. And I'll make all your problems disappear." "And if I refuse," James asked, "then your wife may find herself in legal trouble she can't escape." Liz glared at him. "I'm not his property." "Perhaps not," Holcomb said coldly. "But Gaffney has documents. A preacher who says you promised yourself to him. Bigamy is a serious offense out here." James clenched his fists. "This is all a setup." Holcomb shrugged. "Sign the deed, and everything goes away." "Get off my land," James said through gritted teeth. Holcomb smiled slowly, a smile that chilled Liz to her bones. "You have until sunset tomorrow." The moment he drove away, James gathered his most trusted ranch hands. Liz begged him to let her leave to protect them. "No," James said fiercely, "you aren't going anywhere." But fear hung heavy as dusk fell. James kept his rifle close. Liz stayed inside with Lucy. Colton and the ranch hands stood watch. Then, near midnight, gunfire cracked across the corral. James raced outside with his rifle. Shadows moved among the horses. Someone fired into the night. Flames roared as hay bales were set ablaze. Holcomb's hired men were attacking. James shot back, dodging bullets, fighting to save his ranch. He managed to free the horses from the burning stable while ranch hands pushed the attackers back. Holcomb appeared in the firelight, shouting his ultimatum. "Sell by daybreak or lose everything!" Then he fled into the darkness. By the time dawn came, smoke still rose over the ranch. 2 ranch hands were wounded. Supplies burned. Liz stood beside James as he surveyed the wreckage. She touched his arm gently. "We can get through this," she said softly. He looked at her. "Only if we stand together." Quote, Lucy rode into town that morning to find the preacher from St. Elma, the one Gaffney claimed had witnessed their engagement. By noon, she returned with Reverend Barnaby Cross, who exposed Gaffney's paperwork as fake. But before the law could settle anything, Gaffney demanded Liz be placed in custody until a judge arrived. Deputies dragged Liz away as she cried out for James. "James, don't let them take me!" James tried to fight it, but the law held him back. He could only grab her hands through the bars of the cell later and promise he'd fix it. "I'll get you out," he whispered. "I swear it." And he would, even if he had to fight every man in Jericho Creek to do it. What does a man do when the woman he loves is locked behind iron bars and 2 powerful enemies stand between him and her freedom? James Mallister did not waste a single minute after Liz was taken into custody. The moment the deputies shut the cell door, he gripped the bars so tightly his knuckles turned white. Liz reached through, her fingers trembling against his. "I didn't think it would get this bad," she whispered. "I'm scared." James pressed her hands to his. "I promised you I'd keep you safe. I meant every word. I'll fix this, Liz. I swear it." She nodded, but her eyes were wet. One wrong decision had placed her in the center of a storm she didn't ask for. James felt rage building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed to think clearly. Wyatt Hearp stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "This whole mess stinks of Holcomb's money," he muttered. "And Gaffney's lies. But lies always fall apart if you push hard enough." James looked over his shoulder. "Then help me push." They did exactly that. James tracked down the preacher from St. Helma, Reverend Barnaby Cross, thanks to Lucy's grit and determination. The pastor came to Jericho Creek, furious that his name had been used in a fake promise ceremony. In the sheriff's office, he pointed straight at Gaffney. "You lied in my name," Reverend Cross said. "Elizabeth Cassidy never agreed to anything binding. Your paperwork is forged." Deputy Jonas Smith looked relieved. "That's all we need," he said. He marched Gaffney forward so the marshal could inspect the documents. The signatures didn't match. "Vernon Gaffney," the marshal said, "you're under arrest for forgery and fraud." Gaffney shouted and tried to pull away, but it didn't matter. The law had him now. For a moment, Liz felt the air rush from her lungs. She was free. She could walk out of the cell. But Holcomb was still watching. Franklin Holcomb stood near the door, expression tight and cold. His arms crossed over his expensive coat as he watched his partner in crime dragged away. He hadn't expected Gaffney to break so fast. "Well," Holcomb said with forced calm, "that settles one thing. But, Mallister, you've still slandered my name, and I intend to settle that in court." He tipped his hat with a sneer and walked out. Wyatt Herp shook his head. "He's planning something. Men like Holcomb don't lose quietly." James didn't care. He ran to Liz the moment the cell door opened. She fell into his arms, shaking with relief. "You're safe," James whispered. She pressed her face to his chest. "Thank you, you saved me." But even as he held her, James felt that same sharp edge of fear. Holcomb was desperate, and a desperate man was dangerous. For a few days, things seemed to calm. Liz stayed close to the ranch. James kept extra ranch hands patrolling. They repaired fences and replaced burned supplies. Mama Myrtle brought food. Lucy stayed glued to Liz's side. The talk of marriage rose again, but this time there was no lie to protect them, and no threat forcing their hand. One quiet evening as the sun dipped low, James took Liz's hands and said, "I don't want to just pretend anymore. I want to marry you for real. Only if you want it, though." Liz swallowed hard. Her voice trembled. "I want it, James. I want you. I want this home." They rode into town the next morning. Reverend Josiah Clark welcomed them warmly. Lucy fussed over Liz's hair and dress. Mama Myrtle cried before the ceremony even began. Colton and the ranch hands stood proudly behind James. Liz walked down the aisle in a simple white dress Mama Myrtle had stitched together. James felt breathless. He'd never seen anything more beautiful. They stood before the preacher, hands linked. "Do you, James, take Elizabeth to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Reverend Clark asked. "I do," James said. "And do you, Elizabeth, take James as your husband?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I do." When the Reverend declared them husband and wife, the whole town erupted into cheers. James kissed his new bride with a tenderness that made even the ranch hands blush. For one golden moment, everything was perfect. But peace in the West never lasts long. A week later, Holcomb returned with more hired guns than ever. They stormed Jericho Creek after sundown, trying to bully the town into turning James over. But the deputy had already warned the people. They stood ready. Wyatt Herp, still in town tying up loose ends, joined the fight. The gun battle raged down Main Street, bullets flashing in lantern light. James fought side by side with Colton and the other ranch hands. Liz stayed hidden with Lucy, praying James would come home alive. When the dust settled, Holcomb's men were beaten. Some fled, some were arrested. Holcomb himself tried to sneak away, but Herp and the deputy cornered him. He surrendered when James stepped forward, gun trained calmly on him. "You attacked my home," James said, "and you threatened my wife. You won't threaten anyone else again." Holcomb was hauled off in chains. The danger finally ended. Jericho Creek breathed again. In the days that followed, life settled into a gentle rhythm. The ranch was rebuilt. The land revived. Liz learned to work the forge beside James, her hands growing strong. Lucy called her Aunt Liz now. The ranch hands welcomed her like family. One evening, James and Liz walked together across the prairie, fingers intertwined. The sky glowed orange and purple as the sun set over the plains. "I never dreamed I'd have a life like this," Liz whispered. James brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You didn't just find a life, you made one." She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his arm around her. The horizon stretched wide and wild before them, but she no longer feared it. She had a home now, a family, a love that had been forged from struggle and lit by hope. And James, the man who once found her digging through trash outside a saloon, now held her as the most precious part of his life. Together, they watched the last light fade from the sky, knowing that whatever storms came next, they would face them side by side.